Everything is looking good on all the networks. We have a go on Facebook. We are good to go there. Live. So let's go ahead and refresh screen and make sure everything is looking good on. Let's check out YouTube, Twitter, and all the other stuff. We are good to go there. All the other stuff. My brother, we are now live. Hey everybody, this is Charles Blair, the mad scientist, and I am currently with the myth, the man, the legend, Mr. Vernon Vaghan. Say hello to everybody, Vernon.
Well, what's up? What's up, world? Happy to be here this morning with you guys.
No, I don't. I'm gonna tell you right now. This is true, man. I don't think anybody is more happier than I am. I'm actually feeling a little giddy right now, Vernon. I tell you right now, man. I have been wanting to get you on Duru Interviews for a while, and I am so blessed that you were able to take the time out of your busy schedule to share your knowledge with us today. Thank you, my brother.
Well, man, listen, I'm honored to be here. Thanks for the invite, man. I am always happy to share what I know because listen, I didn't invent real estate investing. I mean, somebody shared with me, so I'm always happy to pay it forward and share with others.
Thank you, man. I appreciate that. And those our listeners out there appreciate it as well. Now, just here is the breakdown of the groundwork for Duru Interviews. Duru Interviews is all about interviewing individuals that we know are doing the business, but can also tell you the business. We're not talking about gurus here. We're not talking about anyone that has a product to sell you or any of that other crap right now. We're talking about dealing with the Durus in this business. And first thing first, I want to let you know this broadcast is all about you and your interaction with our Durus, as well as getting the inside scoop of their success. So first and foremost, I want to thank Kathy Corley for being on the broadcast. Tony Green, Toyin being on the broadcast, Shakia being on the broadcast. Also, we have our individuals on YouTube, Jennifer being on the broadcast, Richard, Mike, Greg, thank you for being on the broadcast. Instagram is on the broadcast. Periscope is on the broadcast. We got everybody, even the president of... No, let me stop that. We got everybody on the broadcast today to hear this brother exactly give us the blueprint for developing a real estate investing business for capital success. Now, my man, Vernon, I know who you are. Let everybody out there know exactly who is Vernon Vaghan.
So my real estate investing career started back in 2002, man. So listen, I consider myself a rookie veteran. Rookie veteran from the standpoint I've been in the business. I mean, coming up on 20 years, but I always have to kind of constantly remind myself that I don't know everything, and that there's always room for growth and room for learning new things. But I started this business way back in '02. I became a homeowner in 2001. One of my family friends at one time was one of the largest landlords in Baltimore, and so I kind of came up around that and just had a natural curiosity kind of about real estate investing. Saw the potential to make profit, and was really hooked, and really started out as a wholesaler, like many of us do. Started out as a wholesaler, and moved into rehabs, and over the last few years have gone into picked up the skill of building houses from the ground up. Really, just once again seeing as a way to kind of evolve, move higher up the food chain, move into ponds that less people are fishing from. But one thing about this business is that I love about it is so many ways you can do it. Right, you can run a big shop with employees and your name on the side of buildings and your name on the side of vehicles, or you can be a one-man shop and not even have business cards. And I've seen people do it well both ways. It's in this business, it's really not about the right way. It's about what is the right way for you.
Exactly. I agree with you 100%, man. And what I love about your story is the fact that you consider yourself, and I love this word green, because in my mind, when you green, you grow. When you ripe, you rot. So I want to always be green. And I know that you have that same mentality of always wanting to learn more. Now, you skimmed over your start in the business. Was there a certain thing that really said, okay, this is the pathway that I want to go down, that really made you decide, okay, I'm going to do or put my all into doing real estate? Was there a certain thing that happened?
Well, I mean, I've got entrepreneurial DNA.
Mm-hmm.
And so, um, one of my first businesses was when I was in corporate America was a cleaning business.
Okay.
And the reason, and so the way I got to that business was I was a salaried individual. And so I was typically, you know what that means? I was typically there until the cleaning crew came, right? I could tell the clock by like, all right, cleaning crew's here. That means it's like 7 o'clock. Like, all right, it's time to wrap it up. But that was one of the first businesses I got into. Um, and that was a grind, that was a grind. That was a business that where, where each transaction wasn't a big dollar amount. And so if you wanted to do 6 figures, you had to do a lot of transactions.
Right.
And, right around the same time I became a homeowner. And, this is probably, I don't know, 2001, 2002. And, and it was a HUD foreclosure. And, at the time I got it, I probably bought it at, pretty much retail value. But, within a year, we saw a sharp rise in equity. And, kind of just, once again, and my, the entrepreneurial DNA
Right.
was like, hey, you should do this a lot more often, and not just the one you live in. And I remember, having us probably like, Thanksgiving dinner or Christmas dinner up at my aunt's house in Baltimore. And I remember talking to the family friend who had, hundreds, if not thousands of units in Baltimore, and said, hey, yeah, I just bought a house and and I bought it for X and now it's worth X. And he was kind of like, all right, kid, big deal. Like, all right, and so just talking to him, kind of sparked the light bulb and was like, all right, you really need to invest. You really need to look at getting into this business more. And the funny thing about it, man, is for the first 5 years of my career, man, I just felt like it was a fluke. I was doing deals and I just felt like, I don't know, I just felt like it wasn't easy, but I was like, it shouldn't be this simple. Like everything I knew up to that point told me that, to make money or to have a successful business is not supposed to be simple. It's supposed to be super complicated. Like no way, you should be able to have any type of success. So I felt like the first 5 years, deal after deal, I felt like, all right, any minute now the gig's gonna be up. You know what I'm saying?
Now you say you started in 2002. So the first 5 years you hadn't hit that crash yet. You hadn't hit 2008 yet.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
Right. And but one thing, one thing I learned and kind of gravitated towards very early on was really sticking to fundamentals, right? So even when the world around me was going crazy in '07,
right,
with what they considered deals, like I remember when people did what they called pre-construction investment,
right, mm-hmm,
buying into a new home community in phase 1. And because, at 400,000, and because the builder said by phase 3, we're going to sell them for $500,000, people said, oh, that's a good deal. And it was like, fundamentally, that wasn't sound. Fundamentally, buying high and selling high didn't make sense to me, right?
Right.
and and throughout my career, man, I've tried my best. With entrepreneurial DNA, we also we suffer from shiny object syndrome. Man. So
Preach
like,
on, brother.
so throughout my career, I've really tried as much as possible to stay focused, and really stick to fundamentals, right? And sticking to fundamentals often means saying no a whole lot more than saying yes. Um, but what it does, it helps to keep you out of trouble, right? And so what happens, in this business, I see a lot of people do is they look at everything through kind of rose-colored glasses, um, and when you start to kind of disregard fundamentals, and like better, but you say, yeah, but I'm different, or yeah, I've been doing this for X amount of years, so or yeah, anytime you start to get rid of those fundamentals, you open yourself up to the possible downside. I mean, we all, as a builder and rehabber, we all, time to time, we all go over budget. We all take longer than we're supposed to.
Absolutely.
Happen, stop work. I mean, you name it, it happens. And if you don't stick to those fundamentals, you don't give yourself any margin of error, right? You don't give yourself any margin of error. And that's one thing I've even good times and bad times, is like, stick to those fundamentals. And yeah, some people are going to do deals where you're like, man, I'm surprised they made money, but doesn't mean you have to follow along, because some of those same people, they will do the same exact type of deal, the same deal numbers or metrics, 6 months later, a year later, and it won't work out. So, so fundamentals is super important. It's not, fundamentals ain't necessarily fun or sexy, man, but they help protect the bottom line, which is fun and sexy, right?
Absolutely. I love it. And the key is the bottom line. As long as you can have a positive at the end of that bottom line, you ain't doing anything wrong, my brother. You're doing it right.
Absolutely.
So here's my question to you.
Mm-hmm.
I know you started off in the rehab phase, and I'm looking at where you are today. I'm looking at the type of product you're putting out there, and it's exquisite. How did you get from that average rehab look to that, for lack of a better word, that designer rehab mindset? Because what you put out there today is truly an exquisite product.
Well, it's part of it, so it's two parts to it. So part of it is certainly out of necessity, right? So in our mind, we try to rehab and we try to build as if the market is bad already, right? Mm-hmm. We see some people. Listen, so one thing I always do is I always check out, my neighborhood competition. Whenever we're about to go in the market, so I always see what is out there and what's the asking price. And you know what, you see some stuff that's absolutely great, but you also see some mediocre and some downright crappy stuff. And sometimes, with this market, sometimes it sells anyway. But listen, I've been through a cycle. Where stuff that's done great and priced right sits just because of the market. Mm-hmm. And so when you get to that point, you can't leave anything on the table. You can't leave anything open for chance, right? So we rehab like our life depends on it. And that just means, and it doesn't mean, going over the top and necessarily blowing the budget. But what it means is, it means that, if you're going to do it the right way. When you're doing a full gut rehab on a house, it's so much that you're going to be doing to the house anyway. When you're doing drywall, when you're doing framing, to us, like, it makes sense to do a tray and coffer ceiling. Like, it's not costing you any more on the bottom line. Right. For us, when you're rewiring an entire house anyway, it makes sense to put Bluetooth speakers in the ceiling.
Let's stop right there, because you were the first one that I've seen in this market really integrating new age technology. Where did that come from?
Um, I'm sure I've seen it somewhere. I mean, I didn't invent, Bluetooth speakers. So and there was a market for them. So obviously people were putting them in houses. The funny thing is, you know, speakers and ceilings of speakers in houses. The funny thing is, you actually sometimes see them in older houses. You actually see them in houses sometimes in the 70s and the 80s,
Right.
with the intercom systems, or like sometimes you'll go into a house that was built in the 70s, and you're like, man, this house back in this day, I'm sure was something nice. Now it just looks funny looking, but you see stuff like that.
Yeah, I remember the movie Shaft. He had him in his house in the movie Shaft. So I know that everything goes round. But the point, right? The point.
When I got into business, man, it used to be like, oh man, this house, you know, 70s house. You go in the basement, it was a bar down. That was the first thing you demoed,
right?
Bar. That's the first thing you demo. Now, when you got space in the basement, you put a bar, man. You put a wet bar down there. So things come full circle, absolutely. And but just it's once again, when you're rehabbing a house, and just about every house we've touched, for the last several years has been extensive rehabs, and so I just look at it like, man, while you're there, why you're gonna be fully cutting it anyway? You'd be missing an opportunity if you didn't add some of that stuff that helps you stand out from your competition. Once again, helps you rehab like your life depended on it,
Which brings me to the question from one of our actual viewers. Donna Perry wants to know, what are some of the sizzle factors that you most definitely will add in your projects, on every project you got?
So ceiling detail, a tray or coffered ceiling. It's and it looks super fancy, super expensive. Not necessarily. Your framer's there working already for him to do some ceiling detail. Typically isn't much, and your drywallers, once again, they're on site anyway. Mm-hmm. So it doesn't cost you anywhere near as much as it looks, right? Big bang for the buck. Our in ceiling speakers is definitely something we do. We typically do them in kind of on the main living level, where you've got them in the kitchen and dining room, in the master suite. So you've got it in the master bedroom and in the master bathroom. And then if we've got a finished basement, which we almost always do, we're going to throw some downstairs. And that, I would probably estimate our in-ceiling speakers on each project probably is going to add somewhere in the neighborhood between labor and materials, maybe of about $1,500, maybe $2,000 tops to the bottom line. But it gives a huge impact. One thing we do in many of our DC properties that we will kind of transition to other markets is anytime you're doing down in the basement where you've got like a bar or wet bar, is putting down a wine fridge or beverage refrigerator down there. Mm-hmm. You buy a $2,500 higher package of appliances anyway. An extra $200 or $300 for a wine fridge or a beverage fridge doesn't cost you anything, but it has a great impact on the people who want the man cave, or who just want you're down in the basement, you don't want to have to go all the way upstairs to get a soda. In the kitchens, we like to do wine fridges because even for people who don't drink wine, they like to entertain for friends, or just have or just show off their wine so they're not going to drink. Once again, big bang for the buck. Other technology we do is things like Ring video doorbells, touchpad door locks. So the front door, has the ability to open it using an app or using the digital keypad. Smart thermostats in a home, a Nest thermostat, or you've got about 2 or 3 different technologies. But once again, you're going to be putting a thermostat in the house anyway.
Right. So
yes, you certainly can buy the $39 thermostat, Honeywell thermostat from Home Depot, right? Or you can spend $120, $150 and get the Nest thermostat. $100 difference. You know, you either way, you got to pay to get it installed anyway. $100 difference helps you stand out. And when we're in DC, when we're rehabbing, doing a product in Washington DC, you know, one thing about Washington DC is every neighborhood is literally becoming $1 million neighborhood. And you know, these aren't big houses at all, right? We are talking about typically whether it's attached or detached. We're typically talking about a house that's usually 1,500 square feet above grade, and maybe like a 500 or 600 square foot. So we're talking less than 2,000 finished square feet, and we're talking upper 800s, 900s to $1 million. And so, you know, for $1 million within DC, get you into almost any neighborhood if you're willing to look slightly outside of DC. Like in Prince George's County, where I live, you know, $1 million probably gets you over 10,000 square feet. So I say all of that to say that, you know, somebody choosing to buy your 2,000 square foot house, it better be good, because they've got a lot of choices. You know, even though they may feel they have to be in DC, I know that they've got a whole lot of choices, and I act like it. I act like it. You know, when me and my partner Drew, when we rehab, we just, you know, we try to make sure we aren't taking shortcuts. I mean, we see other people where I know they've spent like 90% of the money that we did. They've spent almost 90% of the same money that we did. And somewhere in the project, either because of budget or because of time, or they just thought they could save money, they chose to take a shortcut. And I'll guarantee you, something that wouldn't have cost them a lot of money, if it was time, may have taken them a week to correct. And they kind of seem to ignore it and hope that the end buyer is going to overlook it. And it almost never works out. They typically end up spending more time on the market and selling for significantly less than, you know, the other rehabs in the neighborhood that didn't take the shortcut. And so we don't want to be in that boat, man. We never want to be in a boat where somebody takes a look at one thing that wasn't done right and makes assumptions about the entire project. You know, that's a huge disservice to the rehabber. And you know, so we just don't want to be in that boat ever.
Gotcha. Everybody knows that the success of an organization begins at the top and works its way down. What does the inside of the Capital Gateway Development Group look like when it comes to what you guys are doing?
Well, okay. So Capital Gateway Development, that is my, that's me and my two partners, new construction business. So that's something we got into probably about 3 years ago. And that kind of really had an interesting start, because you know, when it came to rehabs, man, I was a guy who, starting out in my career, man, listen, I enjoyed carpet and paint rehabs. And if I saw extensive rehabs, I'd be like, thanks, but no thanks. But, you know, this business forces efficiency, right?
Of course.
And so what that means is, you know, carpet and paint rehabs, you know, everybody wants them, right? Anybody, any low barrier to entry. Heck, even homeowners want them. And so what that means is, an investor, you've got to go towards stuff that's more extensive. And so we saw new construction really as something that most people would look at. You know, there would be a line around the corner to buy a house that needed work. Not so much a line for a patch of dirt, right? All right, most people look at a patch of dirt and don't know the first thing to do with it. And so for new construction, there are barriers to entry. And I'm fine with barriers to entry as long as they're fair, right? As long as they're fair, as long as you can conceivably get over that barrier to entry with enough hard work or dedicating the resources to it. I'm okay with it, because, you know, once again, that, you know, even though it's a smaller pond, way less people fishing, right? I mean, almost, you know, sometimes when it comes to dirt, you know, some of the land we've bought has just been sitting on the MLS, right, for like 30 days, 40 days. You know what the good rehab, you know that never happens. Not anymore, right?
Not any good deals. You're right.
not any good deals. And so we saw that once again just as a way of really moving higher up the food chain, something else we can add to our tool belt. And so in that business, I've got two partners. We're wrapping up our second project, doing the groundwork to break ground on project number 3. And in that one, I'm really happy about our growth. Our growth between project 1 and 2 was a quantum leap. Project 1 took us, twice as long and probably, 30% more than it should have. And so we instantly applied those lessons we learned from project 1 to project 2. And then we'll, apply those even more between project 2 and project 3 and so forth. And so, and that's Capital Gateway Development is the new construction business. My partner Drew and I are partners in our rehab business. For the last few years, we've been going after these huge 6-figure budget, very extensive rehabs in DC on houses that are, sometimes 100 years old. And that one, really a lot of lessons to be learned there, man. A lot of lessons to be learned in a project. When you have a project on both new construction and extensive rehabs, the more line items you have, the more project management becomes important, right? Mm-hmm. If you're doing a carpet and paint rehab, it's a lot more forgiving. You can make a lot more mistakes. Even when you do blow the budget, it's not as bad. But you take that to a 100 year old house in $1 million neighborhood where you are literally redoing everything, from the basement slab to the roof, with a very demanding customer, and you better be on top of project management. And that's, once again, it goes back to fundamentals, and and sometimes in this business, you relearn lessons that you already know, right? You know it to be a fundamental. You learn it early on. Sometimes you get away from it. Sometimes you get lax on it, and sometimes you get humble and you get reminded, like, hey, this is why it's important, and this is why you aren't an exception to the rule, right?
Exactly. Now, first of all, Anthony, thank you for being on the broadcast. Josh Cohen, thank you, my brother, for being on the broadcast. Jason, Terry, Dwayne, Gary, let's see who else we got there. Andrea, Brian, Jason again. Donna, thank you guys for being on the broadcast. If you guys aren't getting value out of this broadcast, I don't know what to say. You got something stuck in your damn ears. Here's what I need you to do. Like it up, heart it up, give this man the props he deserves, because he is spilling his guts right now on this broadcast. Which brings me to the next question. You are fearless, man. You have no fear of anything or anyone. So my question to you is, how did you get away from that scarcity mentality? Because you give it all and could care less what the others are doing behind you.
Well, I disagree that I'm fearless. One thing I try to do is I try to mitigate risk, right?
Well, let me rephrase that. Fearless in the way of there's no scarcity here in what I'm doing.
Yeah.
You're willing to give it all. That's what I meant when I say fearless.
Yeah. Okay. Well, you know what? Listen. So when it comes to competition, right?
Mm-hmm.
My biggest competitor, my biggest threat is a dude I look at in the mirror every morning when I'm brushing my teeth.
There you go. Preach on, brother.
If I can find a way to beat him, I'll be good. No, nobody else matters, man. If I can find a way to beat that guy, if I can find a way to better his best, I'll be all right. Nothing I'm doing did I invent, did I create, do I have a patent on? So thank God, man, I had people willing to share with me, and my list of of mentors, both formal and informal, is long. And thank God they were willing to share with me,
Right.
because I ain't invent nothing. And so when I get the opportunity, I mean, I've when I get the opportunity, I share. I share.
Mm-hmm.
Call it karma, call it the universe, whatever. But I feel it's my duty to tell what I know. And when I don't know, I'll say I don't know.
Exactly.
Maybe somebody should talk to. Yeah, that's the way I look at it, man.
Now, what are your main markets that you're interested in right now? And do you plan
Um,
on going outside of those markets? Because I can easily see with the right infrastructure in place, you could. There's literally no boundaries for what your success can be.
so our major markets, really, we're with, I live right outside of Washington D.C., but I pretty much say that, pretty much anything within, 45-minute drive is kind of fair game. With that said, we concentrate in Washington D.C. We concentrate in Southern Maryland, and some of the other counties like Montgomery County, Anne Arundel County. These are all counties right outside of very healthy and robust DC market that feed off of that market and the growth of that market. And then also the greater Baltimore sub market is also areas we look at. In terms of expanding outside of those markets, for so for our rehab and new construction business, right, sitting here today right now, and I would say that we would probably keep that, you know within distance where we can have, project management from the owners. Not
Gotcha.
saying we won't ever outsource to, other project managers, but right now we manage our own projects, and
Gotcha.
and we're fine with that. And we, in our rehabbing and new construction business, um, we're not about scaling to doing, 50, 60 houses a year. We'd rather focus on quality, than trying to make it up in quantity, right? We'd rather go after the projects, that give the bigger bottom line, as opposed to saying, okay, we're going to take on, three times or two times as many projects. That's with new construction. Our whole goal was, look, let's go where people aren't going, so that we can try to get the profits that we think we should make, as like our buying criteria for rehabs is, we try to buy at 70%, of after repair value minus repairs. Now, as you know, in this market right now,
Mm-hmm.
you know, often the going rate for a quote unquote deal, um, is often closer to 80% of after repair value. And in DC, we see it get pushed up sometimes to 85% of retail value. And so some people might, and if my buying criteria is at 70% and the going rate is 80%, some people would say, well, 10%, big deal. So we're talking about paying 10% of after repair value. So take an $800,000 neighborhood, right? We're talking about paying 10% more, $80,000 more for the same deal. Never in my life have I ever looked at a deal that we did that was successful, and at the end of the day said, yeah, we could have afforded to give up $80,000. Never happened. Never happened. And
Mm-hmm.
so we went after new construction and extensive rehabs because we saw that as a place where we could try to maintain those margins, or get the deals, that we want to. Um, but yeah, I mean, for in terms of expanding, one thing we got back to, and kind of leading into what I just said about, making sure we can kind of maintain the margins that we want to, is, late last year we did make the conscious decision that we had to get back to sourcing our own deals, right? If we wanted to control our destiny, um, we looked at it like, okay, it's two ways we can go about it. We can either pay, you know, if the going rate is 80% of ARV, we can either pay that, and be okay in making less money per deal, and being able to, virtually buy from any wholesaler, or, we can start to kind of source our own inventory, and, and maintain our margins. And if there's such a demand for deals at 80% or 85% of retail value, anything we don't want, we can certainly feed that demand. And so that's something we got back into last year, and we're working on it, kind of working on growing that side of the business, but really being able to source our own inventory. And with, that definitely opens up the possibilities of expanding to other markets. But I think for me, at the end of the day, I want, being in this business, going on 20 years, one thing, I've learned and am relearning is really building your business around your life and not the other way around. So a lot of us get into this business or other businesses, yes, for money, but really for freedom, right? Really for freedom. So really to have, time and autonomy and be able to do the things we want to do and work on the parts of the business that we want to work on. And with many entrepreneurs, first thing you lose is freedom, right? Is those, first thing you start doing is doing the 18-hour days, right? 7 days a week. The laptop's on vacation, right? I mean, that's one of the very first things we start doing it. And we, and the saying is, if you love what you do, you'll never work a day in your life. But my saying is, if you love what you do, you'll work every single day in your life, because it's very hard to, sometimes it doesn't feel like work. So it's very hard to say, instead of sitting around relaxing, I'm gonna work, right? When I go on vacation, what a family is, maybe, some people's ideas, going to a spa or doing something, or, parasailing. You're like, man, I'd rather just open up the laptop, and, with beautiful scenery. So one thing I'm really trying to get back to, or just making sure going forward, is that, any business moves we make, kind of really align with long-term goals. So if it takes me too far off a path of where I want to get to, it's probably not worth doing. And, and yet certainly in this business, in a real estate business, you've got to do deals or do transactions to cover overhead and
right.
have money to reinvest. You've got to, but at the same time, definitely try to pick your shots, definitely try to pick your shots.
Absolutely. Now, first of all, we normally take 30 minutes when we do these interviews, but I'm going to make an executive decision right now. This brother is spitting so much fire, we ain't cutting it off right now. We're going to go another 10, 15 minutes just for the fact that those of you who have jumped on late, and a bunch of you guys have, will get really what this guy is really spitting. So my next question to you is going to be the $1 million question, and I know this question everybody wants to know. How in the hell are you finding all these opportunities in that hot-ass market, Washington, D.C. and PG County, the way that you are?
Well, I mean, once again, over the last couple of years, we've bought, our D.C. deals, we've purchased from wholesalers. Mm-hmm. Now, and I'll tell you, a lot of these wholesalers, the amount they were initially asking wasn't something we were willing to pay. Mm-hmm. And so we offer what we were willing to offer. We kind of stuck to our numbers. In some cases, maybe went a little over in terms of our purchase criteria, but largely we stuck to our guns. And with wholesalers, look, if you see a deal that they've got,
right,
if you've taken the time to look at it or evaluate it, do your due diligence. And if the numbers don't work, make your offer. Two of the deals we're doing now, and I believe we kind of got it on a rebound. Is we made an offer. They said, nah, we've got other people looking at it, willing to give asking price. And I think on two of them, once again, they came back, weeks later, like for whatever reason, buyer couldn't perform, or, people looked at it and was like, hell no, that's too much for me. And I mean, so and you know, we've purchased deals from auction. We've purchased deals from word of mouth. We've purchased deals from good old fashioned marketing. Um, our best deals definitely came from marketing and word of mouth. Um, one of our better deals we did a few years ago had a sales cycle a slash follow up cycle of 18 months. You know,
Mm-hmm.
so we sent this person a postcard. They called back, and 18 months later, through consistent follow up, we were finally able to close it. You know, and so the fortune lesson there is the fortune is always in the follow up. Um, it's so these days it's so easy to initiate, right?
Mm-hmm.
These days it's so easy to press a button and send out postcards, press a button and do a text blast, press a button, you know, and do a voice of ringless voicemail. Um, and it's even ways to automate follow up.
Right.
But ultimately, at the end of the day, it always comes down to a human to say, all right, here's the 60th time I've called this person. You know, here's
Right.
month 12, and I'm gonna keep going. For
Right.
whatever reason, I'm gonna keep calling them. I'm gonna call them a 61st time, a
Right.
62nd time. Even when you feel like, man, maybe I'm wasting my time, person's never gonna sell to me, somebody else is gonna buy it before you gotta keep going. And
Right.
that's and you know, and it takes deals like that to remind you. It takes
Yeah.
deals like that to remind you that that fortune is certainly in the follow up.
Yeah, and I'm a firm believer in Vernon that the follow up, the technology opens the door for you, but it's that rapport closes the deal. That's the key, and
I
people
agree.
and very few people give good rapport.
I agree. You know, so the thing about that deal, this 18-month follow up cycle, was that was that I believe I clinched that deal the day I believed I wasn't going to get that deal. Right, the day it became like, you know, because I had great rapport with the person the first time I spoke to him, and after like a dozen calls, I was like, you know what, man, this this guy's not gonna sell. It was the house that he had built himself, and the house had been vacant for about 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
He had already moved to a retirement community, and he would come by and rake the leaves, cut the grass, and if you when you went in there, the house was like a museum. It had all of his stuff. He was a widower,
Right.
and I said to myself, over the last 10 years, there's no way in hell I'm the first person that's called this guy. So I'm sure he's done this before. And at one point I said, you know, I don't think he's gonna sell, but you know what, man, I enjoyed talking to him. I said, you know what, still weekly I'm just gonna call him, you know, just to, you know, quick check in. Of course I would still say, hey, you know, just checking in. But sometimes, like, I wouldn't even talk about the house, right? Because I'm like, I'm not about beating a dead horse. I'm like, you know what, phone call, 5 minutes, and one day he called me. He called me, and his first word, you know, like 18 months later, his first word was like, I think I'm ready to sell. You know, I was look, man, I was confident that one day I was gonna call the guy and he was gonna say, yeah, um, I decided to list it with an agent, or yeah, I signed a contract. Like, I was confident, and so I started kind of getting an emotional detachment to the deal. I was like, dude, if you don't get attached to something you don't got, you can't be hurt. You know, when he does what many sellers do and just go with somebody else. I said, so cool. But I think that's kind of when I got the deal. Is that when the why when the why was no longer just a house, right? When it was genuinely like, okay, I'm gonna call the guy and we're gonna talk, not even about the house. And I think that's when a breakthrough came through. And so I know one thing, you know, question you asked was, you know, about us, how do you find deals? And I mentioned, you know, we're getting back to sourcing our own deals, and in that is a component of cold calling, and we outsource a portion of cold calling, but I always make sure I try to get some time in on the phones, right? Just to stay grounded, and just to kind of stay in touch with what's going on, and to kind of kind of leave from the battlefield from that standpoint. But I'm always reminded, like, all right, whenever you get the opportunity, the sooner you can make the call about more than just the house, the better you'll be. A lot of cold calling is nothing new about cold calling, but I think in our business, I mean, it's something, it's development over the last few years that, like, where it used to be that a new investor, a new wholesaler, first thing they would do is mail out postcards, right? Now, and a lot of them are saying first thing they're going to do is jump on the phone. They're going to buy a list and start dialing. And so it's the great thing about it is it's easy to implement, right? Yep. You get a list today. Nothing stops you from dialing that list today. You don't have to wait for the mail house. You don't got to wait for postcard design. You don't got to wait while they're in the mail. You can buy a list today and call people today. And so a lot of people love that. And so once again, now that you know that, okay, if you're on the phone with people, you're not the first person to call them. And so something you got to be doing differently. And I think that is genuinely trying to find either a way to build rapport or if not necessarily building rapport in the beginning, at least offering a solution that works for them, right? Right. And sometimes the solution is, the solution isn't me buying your house. Look, your house is beautiful, it's in good shape, and you want to sell it and you want to get top dollar, in a market where stuff goes under contract, sometimes the first weekend or on the market, and you're not distressed or you want to sell the house, but you don't have to sell tomorrow. Maybe you should list it on the market, and maybe I'm not your solution. And that's kind of the approach I've always taken to things is kind of being willing to tell the truth. If I'm not the fit for you, or I don't think you're the fit for us, I'll let you know. I won't waste your time and won't waste mine.
Now, two things I want you guys to take into account of what Vernon just said. One of which is really $1 million way in which you can get into hot markets. Vernon talked about something that we've been preaching for years, OPM. And we're not talking about other people's money. We're talking about using other people's marketing. When you're using other people's marketing like wholesalers and house hustlers to find you opportunities, there's no market depth that you can't achieve because you're not spending your marketing dollar. So that is a golden nugget that you guys should have or absolutely must take away from what he just got finished saying. The power of working with other people's marketing in those hot markets where he's crushing it in right now, like Washington, D.C. and PG County. The next question comes from Christian Ray, who asks, is there any other profit centers outside of real estate that you have in your business?
No. So right now, so all of my so in my real estate business, it is all my profit centers right now are tied into real estate. And look, I believe in diversification, but also with focus, right? So the thing I often see some entrepreneurs do is to take one hand off the steering wheel too soon. And so it's like here's the analogy I use is like contractors. A contractor will always take more work. If you tell your contractor, hey, I've got another house, we're going to be starting next week, can you take it? His answer is always going to be yes. All right. The truth is usually is often no, but he's going to say yeah. And so often what you'll see a contractor, he's working on your house with a crew of 5, and he's going to take on a second house, and he's not going to add any to that crew at all. So he's going to pull away from that crew of 5 that's working on one house, and he might send 2 people over to work on the next project. And in his mind, he is being efficient, all right? In his mind, he is going to finish your second house somehow on time, even though he's diverted, almost 2/3 or a third of his staff or his
Right.
resources. And so with entrepreneurs, we kind of do that the same thing, right? We are like, okay, man, I'm gonna give this 110%, this thing I'm working on, and something else comes along, and somehow we're gonna give that 110% also. Like the math on that one doesn't work, right? like, like number one, 110% on a good day, we're probably firing at 70% on a good day, right? And good systems and good partners, I mean, help you even that out. But on a good day, you're at 70%, whether you want to admit it or not. And so anytime something else comes into your, into your orbit, man, you got to be super selective about it, right? And it's cool if your business that you're in is operating efficiently, and you're taking advantage of all the opportunities there are within your business, and you're addressing the threats within your business. And you've got the resources and systems. Sure, you can take a look at, kind of moving on to the next thing.
Right.
If you're not, you got to stay focused on where the money is already being made, because if you do something, man, and that golden goose, if you neglect it and it's no longer laying eggs, it's gonna affect everything else you do, especially the new business venture, because new ventures are always resource intensive, time, people, and money. And so if you're funding, expansion with one business, you got to make sure that that thing that's funding the new business doesn't suffer. So for some of us, we just got to keep both hands on the wheel, you know, in the meantime. And as an entrepreneur, I certainly always look at other and think about other ventures or things outside of real estate. I do. But focus and consistency is something I'm trying to get way better at.
One of the things we talked about offline is the fact that diversification is a product of, or could be a product of, shiny new toy syndrome. And we talked about that offline. My question to you right now is, you are a technical juggernaut. What are some of the tools and resources you're using in your business right now that you're getting the most KPI off of based on what you're doing?
Well, you know what, man, and I'm gonna disagree with you, man. I'm definitely technically savvy.
Okay.
Certainly technically savvy. I am, but for me, man, it's so systems and tools, especially ones that might have a learning curve.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a guy who likes to kind of be out in the field and hands on, and big picture thinker. And so sometimes when it comes to systems, with the learning curve, they're critical, but at the same time they are tedious, right? And so it requires a discipline for you to be like, you know what, today is an office day. Today is going to be a day where I am going to look at these videos that are mind-numbingly boring, so that I can figure out a way to integrate this system into our business. But I mean, the ROI and the payoff is there, and ultimately, it's something you do have to leverage to, it's not enough hours in a day.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we talk about leverage, in real estate business, we always love the word leverage, but in business generally, you need to leverage people and systems. And so systems is critical. So some of the systems, or the system we're using in our business right now, is we, in our marketing side of the business, is we're using Podio,
Mm-hmm.
which is which is a powerful platform that really allows you to harness the power of automation, right? So I mentioned the deal we did a couple of years ago where I followed up with the person for 18 months, right?
Right.
There were a lot of deals I didn't follow up for 18 months, right? Not saying they would all would have had the same outcome. See, that one was easy to follow up because because there was a rapport, right? Because I generally liked the guy,
Right.
and we enjoyed. And we enjoyed time we spoke. Not every interaction is gonna be like that, man.
Mm-hmm.
Not every interaction is gonna be like, and so on those, you gotta have a way to still be able to follow up 18 months. See, on that one, I didn't need to be reminded to follow up weekly. It just happened. All right, every week I'm like, man, I need to give him a call. On one where kind of you don't hit it off the first hit it off on the first conversation, or where there's not necessarily motivation on the first call, right. And you're like, you know what? Nah, they're not gonna sell to me. So why call again and again and again? Because things change, situations change, people change their minds, and so we do use Podio, and we've started using it earlier this year, but we do use that in our business as a way to kind of automate marketing, to track it, to track leads, and as a way of where marketing, we want to get to the point where marketing happens in spite of us, not because of us. All right.
Love it.
Anything in our business that depends on us. I mean, we're human, right? We're human. I say that a good day, you're operating at 70%. But anything the more and more things that rely solely on you, those are possible threats, man. So you got to be able to do things where it happens regardless of you, not because of you. So gotcha. Podio is one of the things that we use in our business.
All right, man. Now, as we wind down, because we've already almost gone to an hour now. So and it could have been another 2 hours, but as we wind down, tell everybody out there exactly what does the day in the life, or maybe the week in the life of Vernon Vaghan looks like running your business.
I'm usually up at about usually up at like 4 a.m. right? Mm-hmm. So some of the most productive hours of the day are for me up between 4 and 8. So it kind of allows me to clear off anything I didn't get to the day before, which is friggin' often. I mean, it's almost always my to-do list for that day is not completed. So that typically gives me a chance to clear that, to respond to emails, and then like around 8 o'clock is when everything blows up and the new batch of emails come and the phone calls start rolling in and text messages start rolling in. And so one thing we do is 3 times a week we have what's designed to be like a 15-minute marketing huddle at 8 a.m. Something we started earlier in the year and got away from and said like, all right, we got to get back to it. But it's designed to be 15 minutes. Often it goes longer. And in that huddle, we talk about our, what we're doing in marketing, talk about some of the results we're getting, what we need to tweak. And then often sometimes we'll piggyback off that marketing meeting, and we'll just touch bases on projects, what's going on with the project, what needs to be done, and things like that. And then, throughout the day, lately, I've been spending a lot of time. We're wrapping up 2 projects, one new construction, one rehab. Anybody who's done either tells you that the last 10% or last 5% takes what seems like the most amount of effort. It seems like the on your punch list, it seems like the more you try to take that list down, the bigger it gets. And so that, so just spent time, out on site, talking to contractors, saying, hey, how come you didn't do this? When are you going to do it? Things like that. And throughout the rest of the day, typically it will involve, especially as we get kind of midday, sometimes taking phone calls or taking meetings out on site. And then kind of as the day wraps down 5 o'clock comes and all of a sudden the phone calls die down, is another opportunity to kind of dig down and get more work done. You know, things that that are super important to the business. It's easy. You know, one thing I learned was, you know, it's easy to kind of be out in the field, especially you know, spring and summer. It's easy to be out in the field, right, on the road. But and it feels like, you know, that's where you should be, and that's where the critical things are happening. But often, you know, the stuff that's most important to your business is the stuff that requires you to kind of, you know, stay inside, right? You don't get to go outside. You got to stay inside and sit in front of the 2 monitor setup and actually work on something that's critical, that can't easily be outsourced.
Right.
You know, such as aspects of your marketing or just other aspects of the deal. If it's looking at deals, sometimes it's spending time underwriting a deal or evaluating a deal.
Mm-hmm.
But that's, I mean, it's my typical day isn't typical at all, right? I mean, I try to make sure I make time for the stuff that like has to be done.
Mm-hmm.
But then I realized that the rest of the day, I'm certainly I'm not great at time blocking, so I time block the stuff that's super critical, and then for the rest of the stuff, sometimes I kind of see where the day takes me. But I know that the productivity for me is kind of before hours and after hours. I typically don't get into bed probably until about 11 p.m.
Mm-hmm.
That's typically when I call it a day.
Got you. Tell people who want to reach out to you, want to get in touch with you, what is the best way to reach out to Vernon Vaghan?
Best way to reach out, and you know, most of my interactions these days really happen on Facebook. I'm on Facebook. Look me up as Vernon Vaghan, or you can look me up as Real Star Properties. But yeah, that is where most of my interaction happens is on Facebook. Yeah.
First of all, man, thank you so much. You went above and beyond your time. We've had a whole hour together. I really appreciate you guys, and I know all of you out there on the broadcast appreciate the information. We were filled with a bunch of you guys. Kathy, Tony, Josh, thank you. Donna, thank you for being on the broadcast. Brian, it seemed like Richard Bailey says, I see you, proud of you. He said he sees you, he's proud of you. Josh, Nicodemus joined the broadcast. We got Waston. Thank you for being on the broadcast. Man, this has been a fantastic interview. I hope you guys take the time to view this one, download it, put it in your property bank over and over again. Thank you, my friend. I appreciate you. We are not worthy. And thank you for spending the time, man. That's all I got for right now. And all you guys out there, thank you for tuning in on the broadcast. This has been another episode of Duru Interviews, 100% all content, no BS, no fluff, and no gurus allowed. That's it. Take care, and I'll see you later, knuckleheads. Bye-bye.
Thank you.